When you think about Garry's mod, what do you like about it? Is it the building and design of contraptions? Is it the epic battles between rebels and Hugh Neutron NPCs? Is it the artistry that goes into mapping? Maybe it's the roleplay. It could even be prop hunt. The thing is, it could be anything. And while there are many games that bear the label of sandbox, I would argue that Garry's mod is the only game that truly is a real sandbox experience. I'm going to start by saying something audacious. Garry's mod is not a game. Now, yes, I understand that is a strange claim to make. I'm going to argue that Garry's mod is instead an experience, a near 2-decade-long collective of human expression and creativity rolled up into a product which used to solely be a mod for Half-Life 2. To better understand what I mean, let's go back to the year 2003. Picture this scene. It's May in downtown Los Angeles, and the sun is shining. Down over on South Figueroa Street, E3 2003 is in full swing at the Los Angeles Convention Center, with an estimated attendance of 60,000 people. The biggest event of this year's convention is conveniently the one I want to talk about, the reveal of Half-Life 2. Taking a closer look at Valve's E3 presentation, one of the first things shown is a brand new physics system that is demonstrated with a pistol and a tool called the Fizz Gun. This was something that was astounding to the audience, and you can even hear this in the full version of the presentation on YouTube.
So it's this level of believable.
The Fizz Gun was a very impressive tool in the demo. It was shown to be able to manipulate objects and ragdolls and drag them all over the place. The Fizz Gun even had the functionality to create a sticky bomb, allowing a player to weld two objects together. If you're familiar with the mechanics of Garry's mod, you're likely noticing some striking similarities. The Fizz Gun would eventually evolve into the Gravity Gun throughout the game's development, and would not be shipped in the retail version of the game released in 2004. However, it is still usable in the E3_tech demo_2 map included in the WC map pack from the beta leak. This remarkable tool led to the creation of what is largely considered to be the first source mod ever, JBMod. Released in December of 2004, the mod implemented the Fizz Gun and Sticky Bomb tools as seen in the E3 demo of Half-Life 2, alongside some additional features like built-in spawners for props and ragdolls. The story of JBMod is not one for me to tell, however. Like the Half-Life 2 beta leak, there are plenty of videos on YouTube about JBMod. Ratlobber made a very good video about the mod and its original creator, and I've put a link to that in the description. Not long after JBMod was released, a young man named Garry Newman would be inspired to create his own modification for Half-Life 2, named after himself with the title of Garry's Mod, often denoted as Gmod. Released in the same month only a few weeks later, it was met with a mix of reactions, namely, with many online noting its striking similarities to JBMod. It incorporated a lot of similar features like the Fizz Gun and the welding tool. However, some saw Newman's mod as superior, and these positive reactions led to development continuing. While the game's early life consisted of few features such as weapons from Half-Life 2, the physics gun, and the ability to spawn manhacks, it would see a vast array of features implemented over the next 2 years of its life as it began to form its identity. By the time Garry's Mod 10 would be released on December 29, 2006, it would have features such as Lua programming, multiplayer, new tools that allowed for duplication, painting, roping, lighting, face posing, and most importantly the addition of the iconic GM construct. With the mod's increasing popularity and the creation of an online forum for itself, Newman continued developing Gmod as the sole member of his development company, Facepunch Studios. Eventually, as Facepunch began to grow and more people began to help in the development of the mod, Valve themselves approached Newman about releasing the mod as a standalone game on the still young digital storefront, Steam. While he would reject Valve's original offer, they would later come to an agreement to list the mod on Steam for the price of $10 US, with the profits split equally. This would culminate into Garry's Mod evolving from a mod to a full standalone game, released on November 29th, 2006. Since that time, the game has constantly improved with updates to improve optimization and support user-created content through the Toy Box system and eventually the Steam Workshop. In 2012, Newman was interviewed by PC Games N about the development of the mod. where he would lament about not renaming the game when it released on Steam, stating, "That's one of my big regrets. If I could rename it, I would. I'd call it Sandbox." Today, Garry's Mod is a game which has soaked in nearly 2 decades of various types of content. Game modes, props, maps, NPCs, weapons. There is so much content that you could feasibly do anything with the game. It's a sandbox, but you could roleplay, you could race, you could even ghost hunt, you can do whatever you want. If you want it,
it's yours, my friend.
This is precisely why I'm going to argue that Garry's Mod is more than a game, even though I'm still going to describe it with that exact term. To better understand what I mean, let's take a closer look at its user-created content. The game itself is approaching its 2-decade anniversary later this year, and its history with add-ons is nearly just as long. In the present day, the Steam Workshop is the ideal location to find add-ons for the game, allowing for ease of installation and management of add-ons. If you want a mod that adds bombs to the game, just click the plus button, and it's installed. As of May 9th, 2024, the workshop for the game has a whopping 1,809,577 add-ons, which does also include dupes and saves. For transparency, the total amount of actual add-ons for the game, which all relate to some form of custom content rather than the repacking of existing content with saves and dupes, is 350,042. That is still an enormous number, and the reason I mentioned the date of this video being written is because it goes up every single day. Despite its age, the workshop is still a thriving place. And Garry's Mod itself is one of the top 50 games in Steam for concurrent player count, with nearly 30,000 people playing the game consecutively as of May 9th. All of this time has allowed for some truly impressive add-ons to propagate the workshop. From infinite maps, a LiDAR mechanic, fake players, Half-Life 2 knockoff Russian bubblegum props, and even memorials, it is an enormous collection of all sorts of content. Before the game had workshop support, it was preceded by both the Toy Box and garrysmods.org. While custom content was supported since the very early days of what was then a mod, the rise of garrysmod.org, later garrysmods.org, and the release of the Toy Box system in 2010 made the installation and use of user-created add-ons much easier. The Toy Box was a unique system as it allowed for the installation of custom content while playing the game. Typically, these mods were never very large. Yet, as a kid, I found it to be a remarkably fascinating system, even if most of the mods just added a Nyan Cat gun or something like that. And frankly, as an adult, I still find it to be pretty impressive. Of course, these installations were only temporary. If you were to restart your game, all of your add-ons would be gone. In fact, the Toy Box system itself was only temporary and barely lasted 2 years. In October of 2012, the system would be removed from the game and replaced with the brand new Steam Workshop as part of the release for Garry's Mod 13. I personally was fortunate enough to have played Garry's Mod long enough to have remembered the Toy Box, and to be able to look back on it fondly, as can many others. There was one experience with Gmod as a child that I remember oddly well. You know, to this day I could probably recount thousands and thousands of memorable experiences, but this one is just so ingrained in my mind. This memory actually happens to be related to the Toy Box, as a matter of fact. While I would always download tons and tons of stuff from the Toy Box every time I played the game, there was one specific instance where I downloaded a pig mod that would add an unkillable pig NPC to the game. I think as a child that was amazingly entertaining, so I spawned tons and tons of them. I can't quite remember why. Funny enough, you can actually still find this exact NPC in the Toy Box Classics add-on on the workshop. Currently, in 2024, the major repository for Gmod add-ons is the Steam Workshop. But way back in 2006 and up until the early 2020s, there was garrysmods.org. Before the workshop, this was the best place to get maps, NPCs, weapons, props. Much like the Toy Box, I have a lot of nostalgia for this site, as do so many others. The unfortunate reality is that as of the writing of this video in May of 2024, the website automatically redirects to the Steam Workshop. And prior to that, it was an MP3 download website? Like a lot of the topics I've covered thus far, someone else has already created a very in-depth video into this exact topic. I've talked about a lot of things in the last 5 minutes, so let me recap to keep you in the loop. Garry's Mod is old, and it has gone through some seismic changes throughout its near 2-decade-long life. Just the same, it's also experienced a near equal amount of time having its custom content and add-ons go through a similar evolution in the same respect, leading us into Gmod in 2024. See, the sheer amount of content that exists for Gmod is a problem because it does complicate the discussion around the legacy of Garry's Mod. There is so much content, and there are literally thousands of equally iconic and impressive add-ons that are still updated and even created to this day. While I did highlight some of these add-ons earlier in the video, the reality is there are far too many to talk about, even if I made a video dedicated just solely to the topic. If anything, that should tell you about how extensive the history of custom content for the game is, and that variety of content has been influential in Gmod machinimas and animation. This vast collection of content is extremely important. I don't say that because it's just plain cool, but because a lot of it actually has historical significance. I'm not going to claim that the workshop for the game is equivalent to the Library of Alexandria, but all I'm saying is that the loss of its content would be equivalent in principle. Recently, Nintendo sent a DMCA request ordering the removal of all of its own proprietary content from the Garry's Mod workshop, of which there is a lot. So much so that in the official post announcing it, content creators themselves were asked to remove it to assist in the process. I'm not going to dig into this situation further than that, but it's important to bring up this purging of content given how influential Nintendo add-ons have been towards Gmod culture, even if they were literally just ports of models from an existing Nintendo game. The reason I say this is because of how workshop add-ons have been influential in creating products that have significant cultural impacts. This is precisely what I want to get across of everything I have stated thus far. The very existence of Garry's Mod and the custom content that exists for it have been responsible for some incredibly iconic and culturally impactful content. Animations created in Gmod are plentiful. I mean, there are dozens of channels out there that still produce them to this day. Arguably one of the most talented Gmod animators out there is El64Russ, who creates some insanely high quality animations. See, I had to double check that they were still making animations in Gmod, because I really thought this was SFM because of the flow and style of the animation. Turns out I was completely wrong. They even made a video about the process, and there is an insane level of effort put into the production of every animation they make. There's also classic YouTubers like Rubberfruit who famously made dozens of animations using the game, and who would eventually switch to using Source Filmmaker for their final animations. While they haven't uploaded a video in over 10 years, there are other YouTubers who have gone through the same pipeline but with astounding success, like Anonymous. Much like Rubberfruit and other animators, they started out with Gmod animations, eventually graduating into Source Filmmaker. Anonymous is particularly notable because many of their animations are iconic online. However, what separates them from any other animator is the fact that they were hired by Taco Bell UK to create an ad for them. Yeah, an actual ad that aired on television. Think about that for just a second. If they had never made goofy animations in Gmod, and then eventually Source Filmmaker, they would have never had that opportunity. Before I continue, I want to loop back to what I said earlier, specifically about Garry's Mod being more than a game. In this case, the game is a tool. Thanks to the workshop and the add-ons created by community members, a lot of these animations, like those made by El64Russ, are extremely high quality. Even with the simple built-in camera tool and physics gun, it can be used to tell stories, to create visuals and animations that have entertained millions. There are plenty, and I mean so many examples of cultural icons and memes created from Gmod animations. For example, remember how I talked about Rubberfruit? They were responsible for creating the ever-famous and much-beloved Pain is Cupcake.
I am Pain is Cupcake.
I don't know why I said that like a university professor. As a kid, I was inspired by these guys to make my very own TF2 animations in Gmod. What you're seeing right now are actual animations that I made in Gmod. These are real, and they are over 8 years old. Are they going to see the light of day outside of this video? Maybe. Leave a comment if you want them and I'll think about it. Remember when I made that video? Yes, we do have to talk about Skibidi Toilet. Okay, so while editing this, something horrible but convenient happened. Just take a look.
And of course, for the very online, Skibbity Biden.
Skibidi Biden. Skibidi Biden.
Who thought of this? Skibidi Toilet. No one has thought about Skibidi Toilet in half a year.
Oh my god, is this seriously the type of comedy late night shows are doing nowadays?
I should point out right off the bat that Skibidi Toilet is not made in Garry's Mod unlike other Source Engine based media, and is instead animated in Source Filmmaker. Frankly, SFM deserves its very own video, but generally the relationship between both applications is pretty symbiotic, so they go hand in hand. A lot of the settings used in the Skibidi Toilet series are in fact Garry's Mod maps, such as GM Golden City, variations of GM Big City, and a series of other props, maps, and ragdolls from the workshop. Skibidi Toilet, however, is not made in Gmod. That's an important distinction I do need to make. Would the series exist if Gmod didn't? That's not really possible to determine, but it has certainly been influential in not just the source filmmaker world, but with the Gmod animation scene as well. We have yet to get to the most influential and most famous Gmod animation yet. This is a topic I can't even discuss without mentioning Kitty 0706's Team Fabulous 2, arguably one of the most, if not the most iconic Gmod animation of all time. Like many Gmod machinimas, well, basically all of them, Team Fabulous 2 was unique for the insane level of absurdity present within the film. Despite this, it had a really good level of quality to it, 2D animations, and even a reasonably coherent plot. As a kid, absurd Gmod machinimas were sort of like euphoric gas station crack to me. I just could not get enough of them. And while I certainly think there's a nostalgia factor to it, the value of it really comes from the length and amount of effort that went into it. In fact, 5 years after its debut on YouTube, it made it into the 2017 Guinness World Records Gamer Edition. On page 191, it comes in at 6th place for the most watched machinima on the platform, showcasing its popularity and impact beyond the Gmod animation community with over 17 million views at the time. Colin Wyckoff, who I previously referred to as Kitty 0706, passed away in 2015, losing a long-fought battle with leukemia. Kitty's animations touched not only the Gmod community, but so many outside of it as well. Team Fabulous 2 especially is so well known that a group of over 100 animators and artists would later collaborate to reanimate the entire film, publishing it on July 6th of 2020. Team Fabulous 2 Reanimated was a project directly held in memory of Kitty, and launched alongside a fundraiser for leukemia research. The campaign ended up being a smashing success, beating its original $2,000 goal over tenfold. It is an incredible project, and an amazing tribute to one of the greatest inspirations the Gmod community has ever known. Rest well, Kitty. Now I'd like to discuss the Gmod animation channel that has arguably had the biggest impact on not just the animation scene for Gmod itself, but has also gone on to touch the indie animation scene as well. Those of us Zoomers are bound to recognize the name SMG4. Something that still surprises me to this day is how successful these guys are at maintaining a series and just how many views these videos get. Holy shit! Look, I'll admit it. As a kid, I really liked SMG4. Frankly, this was Gen Z's Skibidi Toilet. You know, okay, I don't say that to disrespect SMG4 either. I'm just saying that I'm at the age where Mario's Big Chungus Hunt is hard to find entertaining. See, the last time I watched their videos, they were still making animations with basically just Mario characters. Since then, I've been made aware through friends that they've essentially been developing a cinematic universe with their own characters, which I'm gonna be real and say is actually kind of impressive. They had an inkling they turned into a full-fledged character named Meggy Spletzer. That's honestly pretty dope, and that's a pretty good way to develop a unique identity based off of an existing IP. It's familiar, but it's their own. It's a great way to avoid copyright. If anything, it's been making me wonder, do I have to watch SMG4 again? There's lore? You know, I can really appreciate, even despite all of the takedown requests Nintendo has been issuing over the last few years, they still keep Mario in their modern day content, as what I imagine to be an homage to where they came from. So why do I bring this up? Well, because Luke and Kevin Lerdwichagle, the minds behind SMG4, were wildly successful. That success led to them creating Glitch Productions. I didn't even know Glitch existed until about a few months ago due to probably obvious reasons.
Welcome to the amazing digital circus!
Glitch originally started with a series titled Meta Runner, which was funded by Screen Australia, Crunchyroll, AMD, and financed with a $500,000 grant from Epic Games. It was a successful series not just for Glitch, but Screen Australia as well, becoming their first top-performing investment with 10 million plus viewers across the first season. While the series was originally hosted on the SMG4 channel, they would later turn Glitch into a separate, independent channel. Their next series would also be funded by Screen Australia, titled Sunset Paradise, it being set as a spin-off of the SMG4 universe and released in 2021. Later the same year, Glitch announced their production of Liam Vickers' Murder Drones, and 2 years later, on October 13th, 2023, would release a pilot for a series created by Gooseworks that you've likely heard of, The Amazing Digital Circus. While the success of which is not directly attributed to SMG4 and, more importantly, Garry's mod, SMG4 itself would likely not have seen the success it sees today if they did not have the game as an animation and storytelling tool for their videos. If the game had not existed, SMG4 likely would not have the success they see today. And the most viewed animation pilot on YouTube with 318 million views would likely not exist as a result. Before we move on, I'd like to make some honorable mentions to channels and projects that have an association with Gmod, animation or otherwise, such as Vance Gaming, Elements of Insanity, ST Black ST, Gorgeous Freeman, That Gray Cartoon Pony, the Gmod Idiot Box, and god, so many more. If there was someone you wish I included, leave a comment and let me know because I am absolutely forgetting some extremely talented people and projects as part of this list. Beyond animations and the use of Garry's mod as a tool, it can also be used for theater, a platform that people can use for improvisation to create fantastic stories. I may sound insane, but allow me to introduce Half-Life VR AI. Created primarily by Wayne Radio TV during the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, it was a series that was simultaneously streamed and released on YouTube to astounding success. It maintained viewership and influence even outside of the Source community, leading to the series even selling merchandise based off of its characters. The thing that makes the series unique is how every event and character is entirely improvised. While it loosely follows the plot of the original Half-Life, it manages to simultaneously create an entirely different story despite following the same narrative. What makes the series unique is the improv performances that are all done within Garry's mod, allowing each actor to use add-ons like the Wowazella, better known as the Black Mesa Sweet Voice, to enhance their performance and modify their surroundings.
He's hungry. Teal needs meal.
The series is an excellent example of using the game as a literal theater. The maps are their stage, the player models are their costumes, and the props are their props. You see, in real life, you can't drop a nuke or spawn birds with your mind, as cool as that would be. Garry's mod is a tool which allows these boundaries to be broken. Video games are generally beloved because they act as an escape from reality, and many usually incorporate some mechanic or setting that is impossible to simulate in the real world. While theater also does this exact same thing, there's something to be said about the potential of using the game as a platform for acting. Yes, the series is largely built off of improvisation, but it follows a coherent narrative structure while respecting comedy tropes like the straight man. The fact that it is performed in Garry's mod enhances this even further, and I would argue that it even establishes a foundation for future performances and plays. Half-Life VR AI was a series that was beloved then and beloved now, with an entire trailer being released for the highly anticipated Half-Life 2 VR, but the AI is self-aware.
Is this gonna hurt you?
The game is also home to hundreds of unique game modes, with some of the most iconic being Trouble in Terrorist Town, commonly abbreviated as TTT, and Prop Hunt. While these game modes and their gameplay are not solely unique with their origins to Gmod, their presence in the game has led to the propagation of their gameplay and mechanics evolving far beyond the game's ecosystem. TTT and Prop Hunt have seen evolutions and interpretations to other Source games like Team Fortress 2, and even far beyond with versions on Roblox. Call of Duty even has Prop Hunt as a separate game mode, and there's even a game on Steam with the same name. If you watch shorts, reels, TikToks, or any form of short-form video content, there's a possibility you've seen this bizarre trend of people running away from next bots in liminal spaces. And this is a result of the Steam Workshop and the add-ons it has. In fact, this strange genre of content was so popular it led to the creation of a Roblox game titled Nico's Nextbots, that simply follows the premise of running away from these NPCs in recreations of Gmod maps. Some honorable mentions for game modes also include Murder, Stop It Slender, and Elevator Source, which like TTT and Prop Hunt have all seen clones on Roblox. However, there is one game mode in particular which was completely original to Garry's mod that ended up becoming its own game, and that is Gmod Tower, coincidentally developed by the same group who created Elevator Source. The predecessor to its standalone successor, Tower Unite, Gmod Tower was a party game that allowed players to play games, socialize with other players, decorate condos, and generally have a good time. The mod saw so much success within the Gmod community that the developers, Pixeltail Games, would revive their original vision of creating Tower Unite as a standalone game rather than a Garry's Mod game mode. Even though it is a standalone game that was even awarded a grant from Epic Games, much like MetaRunner, it's arguable as to whether the game is successful. According to SteamDB, its all-time concurrent player count was 1,603 in April 2020. While it generally averages only a few hundred concurrent players per day, it always has. So even though its player base is pretty small, it's nice to see that it really has never declined and is generally consistent. For the last few years, facepunch and Garry Newman have been developing a new game, which he has adamantly stated is not Garry's Mod 2, to act not just as a spiritual successor, but as a redefinition of what a sandbox game can be. The point I've been trying to make throughout this video is that Garry's Mod is not simply a game, but is instead a platform for creativity, ingenuity, and expression that has never really been recreated in any other medium. One might argue that Fortnite Creative and Roblox are equal rivals to the game, and while there is certainly merit to this argument, they don't really compare to the sheer history and influence that Garry's Mod has had over its near 2-decade life. Sandbox, stylized as S&Box, is actually a perfect embodiment of what Gmod is as a product. Newman has stated that the intention of this game is to act as a platform for the creation of game modes like TTT and Prop Hunt, but not just to create them as modes for the game itself, but as standalone products that he hopes can be sold on Steam. In fact, Newman doesn't even refer to it as a game, and that's kind of the point. The influence of Garry's Mod on popular culture and media alike cannot be understated. In either direct or indirect ways, it has had astounding effects through either the creation of game modes or uses of the application as a tool to assist in animation and performance. Frankly, the biggest problem about writing a retrospective on the game is that everyone's experiences and memories with the game are different. Now, yes, that might be a very obvious thing to state, but I say that because while there are certainly shared experiences like playing Prop Hunt or spawning in tons of bombs, every single experience is completely different. For example, go to the search bar on YouTube and look up Gmod. Just count how many videos and channels there are that are dedicated to either trolling around on roleplay servers or just messing around with add-ons. The amount of content is insane, and it proves to still be just as entertaining and popular as it has always been. I'm hesitant to claim that we may never see another game like it, but even to this day, no game or piece of software has even come close to the sheer amount of content and influence that Gmod has had. If anything, it might even be a generational experience. The genres and games that I indulge in have changed constantly throughout my life, but this is a game that I continue to come back to and enjoy just as much as I did when I first started playing it on my brother's PC as a young child, always with the volume down as not to wake him up, given I would play in the early hours of the morning while he wasn't using his PC. Much like my taste in games, my interest in activities in Gmod has changed just the same. I don't enjoy decorating rooms like I did as a child, but fortunately for me, the Steam Workshop exists, and there's always plenty of new content to indulge in if I'm ever bored. Is it the greatest game ever made? Well, that's hard to say. Like I stated earlier, I'm hesitant to even call it a game to begin with. One thing that is for certain, regardless of what it is that Garry's Mod is a generational experience that has provided joy, fun, and even success to millions of people. And to this day, that still stands true. And this is why. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe! I want to give a huge shout out to AlesBrewery and Big Deuce for their help in writing this video. This was an experiment to really enhance the writing and narrative of my scripts that I generally feel are lacking at times, and I really appreciate their help. Go check them out in the description. Peace and love.